Bryant to Odom. Odom, throws it down, and a foul.
I don't think so. If
my ratings would have been a lot better if you would have said yes.
No, I think my son is my best friend.
I love
my
that.
daughter is like.
He is a phenomenon of American sports culture. Once an NBA star, one of the most media-saturated faces of his era, and a symbol of the glorious Lakers dynasty. Lamar Odom, a symbol of rare, versatile talent. But what lies behind the championship rings and the lights of Staples Center shocking addiction scandals that rocked the United States? A shattered marriage with the Kardashian dynasty scrutinized by the entire world. Moments standing on the edge between life and death, nearly losing his life to himself. Who is Lamar Odom? An NBA champion, or a self-destructive genius, constantly walking a fragile line between glory and collapse? This video will expose every truth you have never been told about one of the most painful downfalls in the history of American sports, Lamar Odom. A one-of-a-kind kid, Lamar Odom is one of the most unique players the NBA has ever produced. He was born in 1979, grew up in Queens, New York, a neighborhood that was never gentle with dreamy kids. Standing 2.08 meters tall, weighing about 104 kilograms, Lamar had a body that at first glance made everyone think he was born to live, under the rim-bang bodies fight for every centimeter. But the truth is, Lamar never lived only under the basket. He lived in the middle of the floor where everything is most complex, where you need a mind rhythm and a feel for the game that no textbook can teach. Before self-destruction took over, Lamar Odom once stood on top of the world. When he entered the NBA in a Clippers jersey, people did not just see a rookie. They saw a type of player so rare that scouts argued over whether to call him a forward or a point forward. Lamar's NBA debut is still remembered as something that made no logical sense. 30 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists plus blocks and steals on a broken Clippers team that still lost to the Seattle Supersonics. But even in that loss, Lamar was the only reason fans stood up. And as if that was not enough in the rematch in Seattle, he paid it back in a more brutal way. 33 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 blocks. Not a good game. A statement. That inside a group sinking at the bottom of the Western Conference, there was someone playing like he belonged in a different league. At that time, Lamar was truly being hunted. Inside NBA circles, he was viewed as a future asset. The kind of player who, if surrounded by the right system, could become the backbone of an entire era. The Miami Heat saw that very early. In 2003, they put out a long-term offer sheet described by the media as around 6 years worth more than $60 million, a massive number at the time. That was not a polite invitation. That was a declaration that Miami was willing to place its future in Lamar Odom's hands. But Lamar Odom did not leave the NBA. That decision would later be seen as one of the smartest choices of his career. And then 2011 arrived, and Lamar touched something very few ever do. 2 NBA championships, a 6th Man of the Year. Award a role only players secure. Enough except stepping back so the team can move forward. That was the peak. A peak most players spend an entire lifetime trying to climb. For Lamar, it was once only the middle chapter of a story no one thought would end the way it did. A shocking secret. The selfishness of a star. If you have not heard, let me be direct. Lamar Odom was just arrested for driving under the influence in Las Vegas over the weekend. According to Clark County records, Lamar Odom, 46 years old, is facing multiple charges. First offense, DUI, speeding more than 41 miles per hour over the limit, improper lane change, failure to maintain a lane, all misdemeanors. But do not let the word misdemeanor fool you, because the potential consequences of these actions are anything but minor. According to reports from CBS 8 and 8 News. Now, the incident happened early Saturday morning on Interstate 15. A black SUV came flying up from behind a Nevada patrol vehicle at an extremely high speed. Police said they clocked the vehicle at over 100 miles per hour, roughly equivalent to over 160 kilometers per hour. At one point, the speed even increased to around 170 kilometers per hour, while the posted limit was only 105 kilometers per hour. When lights and sirens were activated, the vehicle continued weaving through lanes without signaling, as if the driver was completely unaware there was police behind him. When the car finally stopped, Lamar Odom identified himself. Officers noted slurred speech, red and watery eyes. He failed the field sobriety test. And then came the handcuffs. Now let me be honest. Drunk driving is one of the most selfish acts on this planet. We live in a world with Uber, with Lyft, with taxis, with friends, with countless ways to not grab the wheel when your mind is no longer clear. There is no excuse, not a single reasonable one. If this were a world where every drunk driver only hurt themselves, I would say nothing. Truly. But that is not reality. When you drive drunk, you are not just gambling with your own life. You are putting the lives of everyone else on that road in danger. People who never signed up to play your stupid game. And Lamar Odom is not some reckless kid. He is 46 years old. He should know this. And more importantly, this is not the first time he has ridden the wild horse called DUI. But what really caught my attention was not just the arrest. It was what Lamar said to police afterward. According to the report, when questioned, Lamar said he was on the phone with his manager and almost home. Then he changed his story, saying he was heading to a friend's house, but did not know the address and was following GPS. There was also another passenger in the car. And sorry, but I have to say this plainly. There is nothing worse than a drunk driver, except someone sitting next to a drunk driver and letting them drive. Either you are a yes man, or you have no will to live. Because if you are a decent human being, the only sentence that should come out of your mouth is pull over. I'm calling another ride. But the peak came with another comment. According to police, Lamar joked, "How's your night going? Besides me, driving like I'm in Back to the Future." It sounds like a joke, but it exposes something ugly. Lamar Odom was not just driving fast, he was trying to time travel. Alcohol and drugs have long been how people escape trauma, but you cannot escape yourself. That Saturday night, Lamar Odom was flying at 170 kilometers per hour on a road limited to 105 kilometers per hour, not because he was in a hurry, but because he was trying to go back in time, maybe back to 2009, 2010, when he won championships with the Lakers, maybe to 2011 when he was named 6th Man of the Year, maybe to when he was still on top of the world before life started collecting interest, or maybe back before 2015, before he nearly died from an overdose, or even further back when he and Khloe Kardashian were one of Hollywood's most chaste couples. A shocking romance with the Kardashian dynasty. The relationship between Lamar Odom and Khloe Kardashian began exactly the way Hollywood loves most: fast, bright, and emotional. In August 2009, they met at a party hosted by NBA player Ron Artest. There was no long getting to know each other, no safe testing phase. Everything accelerated like a car hitting the freeway. Lamar later admitted that from the start, he understood the risks clearly. With Khloe, he believed that if he kept living the way he always had, he would lose her. And if he lost her, that pain would not feel like any loss on the basketball court. They were together every day, as if afraid that slowing down even for a moment would make everything slip away. Just weeks later, they got engaged. To outsiders, it looked rushed. To those inside, it felt like rare certainty. People close to them said Khloe knew what she wanted, and Lamar did not want to wait. The proposal was captured on television, and 9 days later, they held a lavish wedding in Beverly Hills on the grounds of Irving Azoff's home. That wedding was not just a private affair, it was an entertainment event broadcast, discussed, packaged like a modern fairy tale. After the wedding, they walked straight into reality television with the show Khloe and Lamar. Cameras followed every meal, every conversation, every small conflict during the first year of marriage. For viewers, it was rare intimacy. For the couple, it was a marriage inside a glass box. There was no room to be wrong in silence. Every crack, no matter how small, was hit by bright lights. And then the cracks appeared. In 2013, while Lamar was playing for the Dallas Mavericks, rumors of infidelity began spreading rapidly. In public, Khloe chose to stand by her husband. She posted tweets defending him, a familiar reflex of someone who believes love can shield everything. But the pressure did not come only from cheating rumors. It also came from questions about children, about motherhood, about whispers surrounding health and their future. Khloe admitted that at age 26, she did not fully understand her own body, and those rumors left her both confused and exhausted. At the same time, stories about Lamar's substance abuse grew heavier. The breaking point came with his arrest for drunk driving in August 2013 and his immediate entry into rehab, when infidelity was no longer an isolated rumor but tied to addiction and crisis. The marriage could not withstand another collision. What had once been built on intense emotion was now eroded by cold reality. In December 2013, Khloe Kardashian filed for divorce. Exactly 4 years after their wedding was broadcast on E! The fairy tale ended in a very human way, not with an explosion, but with prolonged exhaustion. That relationship once made Hollywood believe that two worlds, the NBA and reality television, could merge into one. But in the end, it revealed a hard truth. The brighter the lights, the longer the shadows behind them. Lakers, glory and pain. Side by side. When Lamar Odom was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, in the deal that sent Shaquille O'Neal out of Hollywood, many people thought it was a step backward, being moved as part of a package leaving the status of a future asset to step into a team that already had an icon. But for Lamar, it became the doorway to the most brilliant and the most painful chapter of his life. With the Lakers, Lamar was no longer the center. He stepped into Kobe Bryant's world, where every spotlight revolved around a single name. Lamar's role now was a supporting one. Not the floor general, not the player the system was built around, but the one who had to fill the gaps. And ironically, it was in that exact role that Lamar played the best basketball of his life. He was steady, quiet, doing the things that never made headlines, but kept the lineup from falling apart, rebounding when needed, passing when Kobe was trapped, slowing the tempo when the game turned chaotic. His numbers were never flashy, but coaches and teammates understood the value of that presence. But just as his career began climbing to its highest steps, Lamar's private life collapsed into a deep abyss. The greatest tragedy of his life struck when his son Jaden passed away from sudden infant death syndrome at only about 7 months old. No fall on a basketball court could compare to that moment. Lamar broke down mentally in the most literal sense. People around him recalled a long silence, the kind of silence no one knows how to touch. That pain was not healed by time. It was pushed aside temporarily by more dangerous things. Lamar sank deeper into drugs, using them to numb his emotions. Then came another blow from life. On a trip back to Queens, he was robbed at gunpoint, an experience harsh enough to remind anyone that the past does not let go, even when you are standing on the most prestigious court in the world. For Lamar, every flight home felt like reopening wounds that never had time to close. Thankfully, the Lakers did not abandon him. Therapy support and a strong enough system helped Lamar return to the floor, not as someone fully healed, but as someone trying to stand upright while still unsteady inside. In the 2007-2008 season, the Lakers reached the NBA Finals. It was Lamar's first real shot at a championship, but that dream ended in a painful loss to the Boston Celtics. A historic rival, a series where every defeat carved deeper the feeling of not being enough. The most bitter part of the Lakers era was not the losses, but the familiar paradox of Lamar Odom. His career was rising, trophies were within reach, yet personal losses remained untouched, never shrinking with each win. Championships applause nights when Staples Center exploded with victory. None of it could heal a child lost or erase the memory of a gun pointed at his face. The Lakers period turned Lamar Odom into a champion, but it also exposed a truth that is hard to accept. Success does not redeem. It only temporarily covers wounds with bright lights. And when the lights go out, a person still has to face themselves carrying the same pain as before. Candyman, the final peak and the year of destruction. There was a period in Lamar Odom's career that from the outside looked like complete success. But from the inside, it was a time when he learned how to survive by adapting or escaping. When the Lakers decided to move Lamar to the bench, it was not because he had declined. On the contrary, the team needed balance. But for someone once labeled a future asset, losing a starting spot was a direct hit to the ego. Lamar did not react with words. He reacted with silence. And within that silence was a quiet identity crisis. He questioned who he was, if he was no longer the first option, a star, or just the perfect patch for someone else. Then Lamar chose adaptation. On the court, he accepted the sixth-man role coming off the bench, but controlling the rhythm of the team. Off the court, he turned to things less dangerous than drugs, but still powerful enough to numb emotion. Sugar, candy, sweets. He ate uncontrollably, as if every piece of candy delayed the feeling of emptiness. The nickname Candyman was born from that, first as a locker room joke, then gradually as a sign that Lamar was replacing one addiction with another. Ironically, during what many viewed as a step back, Lamar played the most effective basketball of his life. The Lakers won the NBA championship in 2009, then repeated it in 2010. Lamar was the glue that connected every piece of the bridge between the starters and the bench. He did not need the spotlight, he needed to feel useful. And the NBA officially recognized that in 2011 when Lamar Odom won Sixth Man of the Year, an award both glorious and bitter, because it said he was excellent, but also that he was no longer the center. At the same time, Lamar's personal life entered what looked like a perfect phase. He married Khloe Kardashian, stepped into the world of reality television, where every moment had a camera. A personal show, bright lights, laughter, family dinners staged like a perfect American dream. To the public, Lamar had everything. To himself, it was the final peak. A height just high enough that no one could see the cracks running underneath. And then 2011 arrived, a year that gave Lamar no chance to breathe. Events came in rapid succession, no time to process, no time to recover. Lamar's close cousin was murdered, a loss that was not just a funeral, but a reminder that violence and the past in Queens never truly left. Before the pain could settle, the very next day, Lamar witnessed a horrific car accident. A 15-year-old teenager died. Lamar was there. He saw it. He could do nothing. Those images needed no retelling. They stayed in his mind like a film with no off switch. It did not stop there. The Lakers included Lamar in a blockbuster trade for Chris Paul. To Lamar, it felt like betrayal. He was not just traded, he was treated like a package that could be wrapped up after everything he had given. Then the NBA vetoed the deal. The trade collapsed. Lamar no longer had a clear place. Not with the Clippers, not with the Lakers. Everything hung in limbo. For someone already mentally fragile, that suspension was poison. That same year, the NBA went into a lockout. The league shut down. No schedule, no familiar routine. Lamar returned to training camp out of shape physically and mentally. He was no longer the cheerful Candyman. He was someone who no longer knew where he belonged. Lamar requested a trade, not because he wanted to leave, but because he could not stay in a state of abandonment. 2011 did not destroy Lamar with a single punch, but with a series of consecutive blows that gave him no time to stand back up. Personal loss, psychological trauma, the feeling of betrayal by his team, the collapse of a familiar system, all of it stacked together. His mind broke before his career had the chance to. The Candyman era was the final peak where Lamar learned to survive by adapting. But 2011 showed how thin the line is between adapting and escaping. When you no longer have a place to anchor yourself, every award becomes weightless. And from that moment on, Lamar Odom was no longer rising. He began to fall. Not because he lacked talent, but because he no longer had the strength to hold on to himself. The career-ending blow and total disintegration. When Lamar Odom left the Lakers to join the Dallas Mavericks, it was no longer a normal trade. It felt more like a hospital transfer. From Sixth Man of the Year from a championship piece, Lamar arrived in Dallas hoping for a reset. But what he carried with him was not just luggage. He carried a fractured mind and a body that no longer obeyed. In Dallas, Lamar was no longer the rhythm keeper. He became a burden. Not because he did not know how to play basketball, but because he no longer knew who he was on the court. Lamar's mental state was so unstable that people inside the team described him as there, but not really present. He stepped onto the floor with empty eyes, moved slowly, reacted late, and made decisions that lacked the sharpness that once defined his name. His basketball became soulless, like a body still wearing a jersey, while the spirit had already left. Then everything slid downhill fast. Lamar skipped practices, skipped games on his own, not because of any officially documented injury, but because he no longer had the energy to show up. His statistics fell to the lowest level of his career. The numbers no longer told the story of a star, only recorded a decline. For a team that had just won a championship like Dallas, Lamar's presence did not bring hope, it brought risk. Eventually, the Mavericks front office had to act. Mark Cuban, known for his bluntness, delivered a line as cold as a scalpel addition by subtraction. Improve by removing. The meaning was clear. The team was better when Lamar was no longer there. There was no graceful farewell. No long thank you. Lamar was cut loose like a chapter torn from a novel still being written. Later looking back, Lamar did not blame anyone else. He said one sentence sounding more like a confession than a defense. "My brain was broken. Not form, not motivation, but the mind." That sentence explains everything. Dallas was not where Lamar lost his career. Dallas was only where his career officially died after being on life support for a long time. But the tragedy did not stop there. After Dallas, Lamar entered a phase of total disintegration, a familiar cycle of denial, addiction, and isolation. The Los Angeles Clippers re-signed him mostly because of his name, because of a fragile hope that Lamar could recover something from the past. But even the most basic things were no longer within his grasp. At times, Lamar did not know which team he belonged to. It sounds made up, but it is a story repeated many times in interviews and memoirs. When the mind is that fragmented, the name on the jersey no longer matters. Lamar denied addiction. He said he was fine. He said he had control. But around him, every sign pointed the other way. No team wanted to sign him again. The phone stopped ringing. Conversations around the league shifted from "can he still play?" to "is he safe?" News about Lamar was no longer tied to highlights or box scores. It was tied to drugs, to disappearances, to stories that made people shake their heads rather than cheer. There were even moments when sources claimed that even dealers cut him off, not out of morality, but out of risk. When even people operating in the shadows do not want to be associated with you, it is a sign you have fallen very deep. At that point, Lamar had no protective network, no team, no system, no role. He was completely isolated, trapped inside his own body. The function of this stage in Lamar Odom's story is clear. This was no longer the fall of a star. This was the moment when the career died before the man did. Basketball left first, leaving behind a man who had never learned how to live without the lights. No one could save Lamar at that time, except Lamar himself. And tragically, when everything around him had withdrawn, Lamar was the person least capable of saving himself. Dallas closed Lamar Odom's NBA chapter, not with a final game, but with silence. And that silence stretched on, spread outward, until the name Lamar Odom no longer brought to mind a rare, versatile player, but a much heavier question. How can a person lose everything even when his talent was never in doubt? An imperfect rebirth. There is a hard truth in Lamar Odom's story. Survival never automatically means victory. For many people, the fact that he was still breathing after the Las Vegas incident in 2015 already felt like a miracle. But for Lamar, it was only the starting point of a journey even more exhausting than the fall itself. Waking up after nearly dying does not mean you are ready to live again. It only means you are forced to face the part of life you had always tried to avoid. In the years after the incident, Lamar entered a long recovery phase that was anything but linear. Some days he looked like someone truly getting back on his feet. Other days his eyes showed he was merely existing. Lamar's recovery did not resemble a movie where everything moves upward in a straight line. It felt more like a slippery slope where every step forward came with the risk of sliding back down. But this time, Lamar did not completely run away. At least not in the moments when he was clear enough to realize he could not return to the starting point. One of the clearest efforts to prove that he still had value was Lamar's attempt to return to basketball, even if it was no longer the NBA. He joined an international tournament in Dubai, wearing the jersey of an unfamiliar team, playing in front of fans who did not carry memories of the Lakers or Sixth Man of the Year. It was not a grand comeback. No one called it the return of a star. But for Lamar, it was a way to remind himself that he could still stand on a court, still finish a game without destroying himself. Basketball was no longer about glory. It was therapy. Alongside that effort, Lamar began speaking more openly about addiction. Not to justify himself, but to admit it. He became involved in opening and running rehab centers, putting his own name on them. Some people questioned his motives. Others believed it was his way of making amends. But however it is viewed, a person who fell as far as Lamar speaking publicly about recovery carries a certain weight. He did not speak like an expert. He spoke like someone who had failed enough times to understand there are no shortcuts. Lamar also became a speaker for people struggling with addiction. The talks were not grand, no big stages, just rooms' tired faces, and a man standing in front of them saying, "I did not win. I just have not lost for the last time." Lamar's way of speaking was not motivational in a slogan sense. It sounded more like a warning. That addiction does not disappear just because you want it to. That every sober day is a new negotiation with yourself. And that sometimes simply staying alive is the hardest task of all. Amid all these efforts, there was one thing that anchored Lamar to reality more clearly than any project his children. They became his only anchor. Not the lights, not trophies, not public recognition. Lamar has admitted many times that without his children, he is not sure he would have enough reason to keep going. For a man who lost his first son, that bond carries no idealized glow. It carries the color of fear, the fear of losing again. And it is that fear that keeps him still whenever addiction tries to pull him away. At this stage of his life, Lamar Odom is no longer an NBA star. No one debates whether he could return to the league. That question no longer matters. But Lamar is still alive. And sometimes surviving without glory is a greater challenge than performing in front of tens of thousands of fans. Lamar's story, therefore, does not close with a neat ending. There is no line that says, "And he lived happily ever after." Instead, there is a question hanging in the air, leaving followers both hopeful and cautious. Will this sobriety last? Or is Lamar only resting between two collapses? No one can answer for him. Not even Lamar himself is sure. Perhaps the most honest thing this story offers is not a moral lesson, but a very human truth. Talent can take you to the top. Fame can hide the cracks. But when the lights go out, what remains is the person and the ability to face oneself. Lamar Odom has failed at that many times, but he is still here. And as long as he is still here, the story is not over. The question is no longer whether Lamar will return to the peak. That peak has passed. The question is whether each morning he wakes up, he chooses to stay sober. It is a small question repeated every day, but for Lamar Odom, it weighs more than any trophy he ever lifted in his life.
Today's content may reference public figures, businesses, or social events. However, all mentions are intended for exploratory purposes only and are not meant as accusations or judgments. Stories like this, they leave a mark. If you want to keep digging into the truth and honor the legends, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You are now locked in with the Black Vault. What's your take on this? Let me know in the comments.